Hey, how's it going everybody? Swagkage here, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think is fairly interesting, and that's the power of Kakashi with 2 Sharingan, often referred to as DMS Kakashi. Now, just for the sake of total clarity, the version of Kakashi I'm talking about is from chapters 688 and 689. This Kakashi had 2 Sharingan, could manifest the perfect Susanoo, and played an active role in the defeat of Kaguya. I wanted to make this video because while I've already talked about Kakashi in the past, I've never extensively talked about this version of him, and recently I've noticed a lot of people don't seem to understand just how powerful he was at this point. I think it's fairly common for people to believe he'd lose to somebody like Ten Tails Jinchuriki Obito, but I've also run into people who believe that Madara, Hashirama, and in some cases even members of the Akatsuki are stronger than him. To be blunt, none of these characters are on Kakashi's level. As a matter of fact, at this point it's possible to argue that he was stronger than both Naruto and Sasuke. Now obviously he only had this power up for a very short period of time, but I don't think that's relevant here because I'm a lot more interested in how strong Kakashi was when he had both Sharingan than I am in anything else. There are probably some fights that you could throw this version of Kakashi into where the time limit would be relevant, but we don't even know how long that time limit is, and the idea with this video is to prove how strong Kakashi is with the power-up before the time limit runs out anyway. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a crack at this. Before we talk about anything else, I want to make sure everyone knows that this power-up did give Kakashi 6 paths power. This isn't just like regular 4th War Kakashi with an extra Sharingan. He straight up tells Sakura, and I quote, "Gaining 6 paths power enhances one's ocular powers too." Now, the thing is, 6 paths level is a pretty vague descriptor. It refers to a vast range of different power levels, all the way from Ten Tails Jinchuriki Obito up to Kaguya. But fortunately, this version of Kakashi does do quite a bit despite his lack of screen time, so it's pretty easy to deduce how strong he might be based on his performance against Kaguya. One of the most impressive things about him is his speed. He doesn't really seem to have any trouble keeping up with Naruto and Sasuke, and he manages to land multiple clean hits against Kaguya. Not to mention, he's also shown reacting to multiple attacks from Kaguya, so I think it's safe to say that none of these examples qualify as outliers. Now, his power and durability aren't as easy to quantify. As a matter of fact, doing so might be impossible. We only really have one statement to go off of, and even then, it's questionable. Naruto calls Kakashi's Susanoo more awesome than Sasuke's, which could mean that its armor is more durable and its punches hit harder, but it could also mean that Naruto just thinks it looks cooler or has cooler abilities. It's impossible to infer anything meaningful from this without making assumptions, and like I said, this is really all we have, but that's okay because, in my opinion, his power and durability are irrelevant. For the purposes of determining the outcome of any fights involving this version of Kakashi, all that really matters is his speed. Now, that might sound weird at first, but the thing is, Kakashi can use Kamui. Both versions of it, in fact. As I've said many times in the past, Kamui is super duper overpowered. You could make a pretty strong case for it being the best offensive jutsu in the series and the best defensive jutsu in the series. Like, you can't hit a Kamui user, and you can't block Kamui either. As long as he and his opponent are relative in speed, Kakashi can dodge any attacks they throw at him, and can ignore their durability by combining Kamui with other attacks. Something worth mentioning at this point is that when Kakashi used Kamui against Kaguya, it was the best we'd ever seen it. First of all, according to Madara, using both eyes together doubles the speed of the jutsu, which is a little crazy because it's not like Obito ever had any trouble using Kamui reactively. So this means that the window Kakashi has to react to incoming attacks is doubled. It also means that if Kakashi uses Kamui the same way he did against Deidara, or the same way Obito attempted to against Minato, his opponent should only have half as much time to react. Reason number 2 why Kamui was better than ever here is because Kakashi showed that he could use it in all sorts of new and unique ways. For example, his Susanoo had Shuriken that teleported anything they cut through into the Kamui dimension. He could combine the power of Kamui with the Raikiri for a similar effect, and when using Kamui the same way he had throughout most of Shippuden, he was able to teleport away one of Kaguya's dimensional portals. Not sure how he did it, but it definitely happened. So when it comes to this version of Kakashi, we're talking about somebody who the rules don't really apply to. He's got everything that made Obito so crazy, in addition to the version of Kamui that we normally associate with Kakashi, and he can cast Kamui twice as fast, and he has 6 paths powers, and he has extra Kamui abilities. So for those who are still wondering, yes, I do think he's stronger than Naruto and Sasuke. Stronger insofar as he could beat both of them in a fight, and could probably beat anyone that they could beat in in a fight. Stronger is a bit of a weird word to use because, like I said, we don't know how durable he is or what his attack potency is. But what I'm getting at is that this Kakashi has the tools necessary to beat just about anyone else in the series. The only person who I feel comfortable saying Kakashi would lose to in a one-on-one is Kaguya, because she could teleport him to another dimension that he wouldn't be able to return to the real world from. Despite how well he performed in the fight against her, it did still seem like he was relying on Naruto and Sasuke to seal her. And no, by the way, that does not mean that they were more powerful than him, it's just that they were the only ones who could use Six Paths Chibaku Tensei to seal her. It's sort of like how KCM2 Naruto was more powerful than War Arc Kakashi, but Kakashi needed to be there in the fight against Obito because they couldn't do any damage to Obito without him. The fact that Kakashi's presence was necessary at the time isn't indicative of him being stronger than Naruto, only it's like the reverse case here in the Kaguya situation. Another character who might be able to beat Kakashi up is Hagoromo. Sticking strictly to manga canon, we don't really know what he's capable of, so he might have all sorts of crazy, wacky abilities that make Kamui useless, or he might just be fast enough to make Kamui a non-issue. I'm not really sure. Six Paths Madara is also a bit of a weird matchup because I don't think Kakashi has any way to detect the Limbo clones, and he also doesn't have any durability feats, so if he gets hit by one of them, he might just die immediately. But if we assume he activates the Susanoo as soon as the fight begins, then he should be able to take care of Madara with a couple Kamui Shuriken. I know that Kakashi's actual body is significantly faster than Madara, since he was able to blitz Kaguya after Zetsu mentioned her speed increased significantly. And while I personally believe that his Susanoo should be able to move at a speed similar to that of his actual body, I can think of a few ways to play devil's advocate with that. But even considering that, I do think that there's enough evidence to suggest that Kakashi Susanoo should at least be faster than Madara. When she was in her weird rabbit Biju blob mode, Kaguya's tentacles were fast enough that Naruto thought he should warn Sasuke about them. It's clear that he considered them a threat, and Kakashi was able to cut through them with his Kamui Shuriken, and you could say to that maybe Kaguya didn't have the awareness necessary to perceive incoming threats, since she had turned into a feral blob monster. But right after Naruto commented on the speed of the tentacles, Kakashi did swoop in with his Susanoo to save Sakura from one of them. So I think you can safely and definitively say that both in and out of his Susanoo, Kakashi is faster than Madara. It's a weird fight and one that I'd be happy to elaborate on in its own video if you guys are interested. But in short, I think Kakashi would win, though there are a handful of different ways that you could argue Madara would take it. Setting aside his inability to perceive the Limbo clones, I think that Kakashi is definitely more dangerous than Madara, and would probably have a much easier time beating Naruto and Sasuke than Madara did. Given his speed, his ability to ignore any attacks thrown at him, and the fact that he can one-shot anybody with Kamui, I feel pretty confident saying that Kakashi is, aside from Kaguya and arguably Hagoromo, the strongest character in the entire series. That said, if you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments or on Twitter. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I think that there's an interesting discussion to be had here, so I genuinely look forward to hearing from some of you. Now, real quick, before I get out of here, today's video is sponsored by Loot Crate, and I'm gonna be honest, I'll be a little bit surprised if most of you haven't heard of Loot Crate already. They've been around for quite a while, sponsoring creators like me for years, though I imagine what you guys are probably more interested in is what actually comes inside of a Loot Crate. So the idea with these things is, well, it's sort of in the name. It's like a loot crate. When you get to the end of a dungeon or a raid or whatever, and you see the big treasure chest at the end of a hall, typically a lot of excitement there because you're like, oh boy, I wonder what's inside. It's full of all sorts of cool randomly assorted stuff, and as long as you stay subscribed, you'll get a new Loot Crate every month. Now, I'm sure at least some of you are wondering, well, what if Loot Crate puts something in the crate that I don't want? And see, I understand your concern. Fortunately, there's more than one different kind of Loot Crate that you can pick from, so you get to personalize the stuff you'll be getting every month. When I was offered this sponsorship, I got sent a Loot Crate for free, and I picked an Elder Scrolls crate. It was full of nothing but Elder Scrolls merch, and there are all sorts of other different themes that you can pick from. Something that's pretty similar to the Elder Scrolls is Fallout, but there's also other stuff like, of course, anime, Harry Potter, Marvel, horror, Rick and Morty, if you really want Rick and Morty merch every month. If you use the code SWAG15, you'll get 15% off of your order, plus you'll get to support the channel in the process, so hey, win-win for both of us. Thanks again to Loot Crate for sponsoring this video, and that's gonna be all from me. Catch you later, and as always, thanks for watching. Swagkage out. Bye.